NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Scarlet Knights with a 31-17 victory over mighty Maryland. The Terrapins have been vanquished. It's like I wish the Rocky music could play. It's not on this podcast. This very podcast for 2 weeks. Hearing all about, Maryland. Oh, the mighty Terps are coming to Maryland. Oh, no. Oh, I can't beat Maryland. Well, they beat Maryland. How you guys feel about that? Are you going? It's like Ali. Down goes Loxley. Down goes Loxley. Coming strong on a Monday morning. Good grief.
Sorry. You went out on a limb. You got it right. You have all the right to gloat.
Loxley.
You know who else has a right to gloat? Greg Schiano. He asked us to call our shot, and like you wrote in your column, they made it to a bowl game.
The shot was called. Good for him. Good for him. And we praised him in that column. I praised the team. I give them a tremendous amount of credit. They did not quit on the season. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say you're surprised, but at the same token, where this team was when it lost to UCLA, I thought that a bowl game seemed the needle had had drifted to unlikely. Instead, they wrapped it up with 2 games left. Hey, all the credit in the world to them.
Totally. Sorry, I was laying down, dying as you were doing your dramatic reenactment and lost control of my microphone. So the pain of that Maryland hype will never escape, just like my 10-2 prediction at the beginning of the season. Although that prediction did come along with the Citrus Bowl. And I'm not going to say that the Citrus Bowl is not out of question at this point.
Wow. You're still coming strong with the Citrus Bowl. If Rutgers was 10-2, what did you pick for? What did you pick Maryland to go?
Undefeated.
They're gonna go 15-0. Well, Steve's only playing 12 games, but they're Maryland.
Steve, what you're forgetting is that when rivals play against each other, you throw out the record books, you throw out the records. When it's a vicious, heated rival between these two teams, obviously crazy things can happen.
This is true. All right.
My guy, Mike Loxley, the guy I represent. I mean, coaching disparity in this game. It was Greg Schiano's one of the best games I've ever seen him coach. And then Loxley, wow. I said, wow, there were some head scratchers there.
Let's drill into that, because I do think you're absolutely right. This was a really well-coached game by Greg Schiano. We have criticized him on this podcast for decisions he's made in the game. I can't think of a single one. I will say this, and this is the one that comes to me. It turned this game around with 4th and 2. They're down a field goal. I'm sitting there, and my first guttural reaction is, oh no, take the points. That's the first guttural. But the more you think about it, you're like, you know what? Maryland's defense is no good. You're playing this to win. It turned out that was not only the right decision, but a great decision, a great play call too. And I think it completely turned the game around. They scored. Monangai scored on the next play after they get the first down on the 4th and 2. I mean, Greg Schiano gave the same answer he always gives, but this was, to me, was a different situation altogether.
I like the call. I think everyone likes that it worked. I do wonder, because that was at a point of the game where they're kind of trading scores. So obviously, if you don't convert it, Maryland still has to go 87 yards or however long the distance was. But Maryland was at a point where their offense was kind of humming. It didn't start well and it didn't finish well, but it was good in that period. But that doesn't matter, because they converted it, and we are judged not. We should probably be more process oriented and not results oriented. But we're a results oriented business here on the Rutgers Rant, and the result was it worked. They scored a touchdown on the next possession, the next play. Sorry, and they kind of took control from there. So. I thought it was a great play call too. Rutgers was really, really good in critical situations, converted all 3 4th downs, was really good on 3rd down until the 4th quarter. So I think Greg Schiano saw his offense playing well, saw Maryland's defense, to your point, not playing very well, and put the ball in the hands of the best quarterback Rutgers has had in a decade, and it worked out.
That's how the point Brian made at the end there was how good Rutgers was on 3rd and 4th down. made it a little bit easier for Greg Shannon to make that call, I thought. So they were converting at a high level. The slant to Ian Strong or Dymere Miller was just open every single play. And then there it was in that critical situation again. So Maryland's corners couldn't cover those plays, and Rutgers took advantage. So I was like you, Politi. I said 17-14, tie this game, right? Like there's still so much time. Hindsight couldn't have worked out better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to, if we're going to praise Shannon, we're going to praise his coordinators. If last week the win over Minnesota was the Harris-Simiak, unlike the FS1 team, I can pronounce that word. The number, we'll talk about that later. The number of different pronunciations we got for Harris-Simiak was really something. If the Minnesota win was his game, I thought in a lot of ways this was Kirk Shiraka's game. This passing game is what we've been looking for. You forget just how anemic this team was as a passing offense. A year ago, didn't score a point against Maryland. Go 31 to have 3 receivers involved and still run the ball really well. I get it, not a great Maryland defense, but I just thought it was just a lot of good things happening on offense, and that's not something we've been able to say a lot on the show.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if it's the quarterback being better than they've had in the past, the wide receiver group being better than they had in the past, a combination of that, an offensive line that rose to the occasion, having the best running back they've had in 20 years, all of that is kind of combining. And I thought Kirk Straka called a great game in that they didn't try to force feed the ball to Kyle Monangai. They saw a bad pass defense on the other end, and they attacked it, and they got the ball to their best players. They didn't, I think they had 4 different guys or 5 different guys catch a pass, but 15 passes went to Ian Strong and Dymere Miller. Your 2 best players. You put the ball in their hands. They made plays. Ian Strong every week is getting better. Dymere Miller, after a slow start, is really emerging into that number 1 wide receiver. He's already surpassed Bo Melton for the best wide receiver season since Leonte Carroo. He could still surpass Leonte Carroo's 2015 season. So that, again, the combination of all of that and Kirk Straka's play calling, that was maybe the best offensive game they've had this year. I think it's hard to think of a better one.
Yeah.
No question. And right, the quarterback gets all the praise and all the blame. That's the nature of the position. But what you're seeing is that every time going all the way back to UCLA was the start of this upward trajectory for Callie Ekmanis. And you're like, okay, that was a really good game. And he keeps getting better. So you're seeing improvement from him, and that's elevating the play of everyone else. So I think a lot of the praise has to go there. He's been better than expected, in my opinion.
Yeah. Chris Carlin said the numbers on the radio show. I think the last 4 games, 1,078 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, all right, there you go. That is collegiate quarterback play. I mean, that's been like a season for Rutgers in a lot of ways. I exaggerate, but I'm not that far off. I mean, that to me against 4 Big Ten opponents, he made 2 great throws. The 2 I'm thinking of, one he gets smacked. Absolutely drilled and completes a pass over the middle. The next one, I mean, that night, the dime over Miller's shoulder for the touchdown, just a perfect touch on that ball. I mean, look, they wanted an upgrade. And we knew they were going to have an upgrade over Gavin Wimsatt. We didn't know to what degree. I think the last few games, it's a pretty decent jump.
No doubt. And a lot of it is making the plays when they need to. That Dymere Miller play, he was wide open, and that shut the door on Maryland. And watching back the game, like Maryland had a couple of opportunities to a similar degree of being open, and Billy Edwards just misses his receiver. And on the first drive, for example, he misses Ty Felton for what would have been a walk-in touchdown, and then they end up missing a field goal. That's a 7-point swing. Obviously, Ethan Kalikmanis has a chance there to kind of step on Maryland's throats. He finds Dymere Miller. My personal favorite play was when Gus Zielinskis looks like he snapped the ball too early on a 4th down, shocked everyone in the stadium, and Kalikmanis juggles the ball and finds Ian Strong wide open on a slant to move the chains on what would be their first touchdown drive.
That's great.
So, and the biggest thing to Kalikmanis for me was that he put together, maybe not for the first time, but for the first time I can remember, a complete game. At Minnesota last week, he was awesome in the first half and fell off a cliff in the second. This game, he was not great in the first 2 drives, but after that, he was nails the whole game. And that's what you want. You want a quarterback that can be consistent a whole game, that can complete the easy throws, that can make the big plays when you're asked to do it. He did all of that on Saturday.
And I want to bring this back all the way to spring ball when Gavin Wimsatt was still here, and Ethan Kaliakmanis had to beat him out for the job.
Mm-hmm.
I remember saying at that point, it was close. And I know Greg came out a few weeks later and said, right, like Ethan Kaliakmanis's accuracy was just so much better. That's why he won the job. But there were some plays in the scrimmages in the spring game where he threw like crazy should-be interceptions, and you're not seeing any of that in Big Ten games, which is, I think, the best thing that could have happened for Rutgers is that this guy not only won the job, was good enough to win the job, but has gotten better. And he still has a whole nother year. So Rutgers may be building its team around this guy next year. That's the big point too.
You don't think there's an if? I think yes.
Yeah, sure.
That's exactly what's happening. No question. Yeah, and I do wonder if you're going to nitpick anything. I wonder, did they wait a little longer to take the training wheels off the offense? I mean, I wonder if this would have been different if they weren't wedded to the idea they're going to be the ball control defense. You know, if they made that change early on, if they realized that the defense wasn't going to be what it was last year. I don't know. Is that a fair criticism to wonder if this would be a little different if they or they have these receivers just developed during the course of the season to the point that they can trust them now?
Outside of that, Nebraska, it felt like the offense was kind of just not going to beat that defense. Nebraska's defense was just better. And then Rutgers went shot for shot with UCLA. And you're like, all right, the offense is there, but
you're skipping Wisconsin. I guess we're just going to forget that one because of how bad it was. It's just fair.
Just so long ago.
I think Shanna wants to forget it as well. So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good point. That's obvious. 0 points in that game. So yeah.
7.
Oh, 7. Okay. Either way, just not good. But overall, yeah, I think you've seen the growth, and not that they waited too long. I just think it just took some time to really to get it all together. Because even like Brian just said, last week, you had a great first half, you had a bad second half. This was finally the all-encompassing performance.
I'd say a few factors. I do think the fact the wide receivers are getting better certainly helps. I think the fact that, at least in this game in particular, Maryland has maybe the worst pass defense in the Big Ten. So that's a weakness you're exploiting. I think another part of it is, one, the offensive line is now down 2 starters. And while they were good in pass protection, they could get really no push, and they gave up 6 tackles for loss. So they really struggled in the run game. And 2, I mean, Kyle Monangai is clearly banged up. They had to keep him out of the game against USC, and he carried the ball 25 times. But I think the telling stat to me was that they ran play action 1 time, right? So they're not putting Kyle Monangai in risk other than giving him the ball. Like, they're not going to fake a handoff and let him get drilled by a defender thinking he has the ball. So I think part of that is also they have to throw the ball more because they don't have their stud running back at 100%. And when you have maybe the 3rd best running back in the Big Ten, certainly a top 5 running back in the Big Ten, I think it's hard not to give him the ball, especially when he was playing so well to start the season.
Yeah. All right. And let's talk about Kyle, because a special day for him. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons puts him into Rutgers royalty. Rutgers royalty was there to watch it. Brian, you talked to Ray Rice. That's kind of cool. I think it's funny. The game started with like, oh, we might. Again, this is the FS1 broadcaster saying this, so take it for what it's worth. But they might have him on a pitch count. There was some doubt where he was going to play. I don't think I ever doubted that Kyle was going to play, but I certainly did not expect him to be running in the 4th quarter, throwing his body into the Maryland defensive line to preserve that victory. Just a really good, gritty, gutty, typical Kyle Monangai game. And it's cool that Ray Rice was there to congratulate him.
Yeah, it really worked out, right? Because Ray lives in Maryland now. It's close to him, so he was able to make the drive. And Kyle had 69 yards to go to get to 1,000 rushing yards, so attainable. But like you said, you don't know how much he has in the tank, how much they were going to let him run. I think once he got that big run in the second half, even when it got pulled back, that's when he broke the record. That kind of opened the dam. And Ray Rice looked like a proud older brother. He said Kyle's he said Kyle was like a little brother to him. And I think he is glad to pass the torch. He told him he literally is passing the torch to him when they had a nice little post-game moment. And Rice, I think we all talk about seeing Ray Rice in Kyle Monangai. I think Ray Rice sees it a little bit. He said that he's watching him from the stands, and Kyle's making a cut, the same one he's thinking about in his head, as though he's playing. And it's just a really cool moment. Like, I think Kyle obviously revered Ray Rice. I don't know if as a kid he did, but certainly since he got into the program, understands the magnitude of what Ray did. I mean, if you look at the records Ray has, it's unbelievable how much better he is than every player that has ever played for this program. But Kyle is approaching second place spot, right? And I think it was just a really cool moment where sometimes these things just don't work out, and all the stars kind of aligned for a really special night for everyone involved.
Right. It was very cool. Yeah. All right. And the two pieces of good news: A, going bowling now, and B, we might not be going to Detroit. At least that's what I'm reading on the internet this morning. I don't know if that's true or not, but went through and looked at all the people who categorized this, or like can't imagine that like they're spending a lot of time like, oh, where, like after they do the playoff, where's Rutgers going to go? But anyway, we got this morning we got 5 votes for Phoenix, which is now just the rate bowl. They dropped the guaranteed in the rate. I don't know what happened to the guaranteed. Seems like guaranteed got the shaft there, but the rate bowl, 1 for Detroit, 1 ReliaQuest, and our favorite, the Boca Bowl. The Boca Bowl playing UConn on December 18th. I have no idea where that came from, but sign me up.
Yeah, sign us on the dotted line right now.
Before
no question.
Christmas. Yeah, it's not a good bowl, I don't think.
No,
but no,
it's an excellent bowl. Are you kidding me? We're going to Florida in December. We're not spending
18th.
Christmas away from our families. Yeah. They're playing, they're playing a beatable opponent. What more could you want out of a bowl game?
That's not a reward.
Some high stakes, something meaningful.
No one remembers that Rutgers beat Ball State in the International Bowl. People just remember that Rutgers won the game.
People are going to remember they beat Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl, even if it was the second stringers.
Yeah, it's tough. That's a tough match, and I can't imagine that there's any. Though I do think, and I went through this and I tried to figure it out, and it was really an exercise in futility. I do think Rutgers is going to get a better bowl than people expect, just based on looking at this. And Pat, you put this in a lovely chart on Ninja.com. Everyone can do this, play this game themselves. But if you mark off who you think is going to win the games, to me, Iowa's 6-4 now. They're going to be 8-4 at Maryland. They play Nebraska. Wisconsin's 5-5. They're going to be 7-5 at Nebraska. Minnesota, I think they're the better team there. But if you look at the rest of those teams that they're competing with, I think a lot of them are just going to be, there could be a glut of 6-6 teams. So I don't know if that means Rutgers is going to get a better spot if they win one of these last 2 games. They, of course, could be 6-6 as well. I get that. But Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska might not get a bowl at all, 5-7. Washington, I don't think count we have to worry about them for bowl position. No, we don't.
Don't worry about the Pac-12 teams. They play in their own games.
They play in their own little world. Yeah. But overall, I mean, what do you think as you dig into this, Pat? Are we looking at a better shot for ReliaQuest or for Music City or one of those games?
I do. I think Rutgers has a better chance of getting into the Music City Bowl or Duke's Mayo Bowl, which is ranked higher on the Big Ten's tier than the Detroit or Rate Bowl. So I always start with at the top, and the team that controls its own destiny is Illinois, right? They're in that driver's seat to finish as the first team that doesn't make the college football playoff. They would go to the Citrus Bowl. That's like a no-brainer if Illinois beats Rutgers. But in the situation where Rutgers kind of pulls the upset this weekend, that changes everything. So everything is at stake. If you're trying to play your way up the bowl tiers here, Rutgers has the best opponent possible on Saturday, and probably the best opponent to close out the season. Even if you lose, you got a good shot to get to 7-5 and jump out of that 6-6 muck that you were explaining. So
right.
I think there's a really good chance that those Citrus Bowl and ReliaQuest are the top 2. Then it's Music City and Duke's Mayo. I think that's probably where Rutgers is going to land, even at 7-5.
I would say you probably have to hope for that Nebraska doesn't make a bowl game, because you say what you want about Nebraska. They're an infinitely bigger brand with a much bigger fan base that bowl games are going to want to go to their game. So I think that's major competition. I think Minnesota is probably ahead of Rutgers at this point. Which bowl can they not go to, Pat?
Let's see.
Minnesota's got at Penn State and Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's not good.
So,
Minnesota is not. They're eligible for everything.
Okay. Well, fair. And again, we're doing this with 2 games left in the season. This is a wasted exercise. But I mean, Wisconsin's 5-5, right? They still have to win one more game, and they just fired their offensive coordinator. which is kind of funny in hindsight. Everyone wanted Phil Longo to be the offensive coordinator at Rutgers when the opening happened. Now Kirk Shiraka is running this, high-powered offense, and Phil Longo's out on his butt in Madison.
Right. Hey, it's wild.
I don't know. I think, look, the history shows us that we're going to end up in Arizona. I think unless Rutgers goes 8-4 and really forces the hand of the bowl game order, I just don't think any of the higher ranked bowl games are going to go out of their way to pick Rutgers. I just think that's the reality.
Mm-hmm. You might be right. I do. There's a lot of behind the scenes negotiating with this stuff as well. Sure. I mean, it's not as clear cut as they're drafting and they're picking. Right. So I don't know. I mean, Greg Shannon might have a favor he can call in somewhere along the line. And he might, they might look at that game and say, okay, that's not, they're going someplace west for the holidays. It's Phoenix. It's warm. They might not, that might look like a appealing one year after going to the Bronx, which again, the Bronx has its pluses too. You bring your fan base over there, you're local, all that stuff. But someplace warm. Like the Phoenix does check the box at someplace warm, even if it is considered a lower tier bowl. I do wonder, like fan wise, would you rather go to Phoenix over Charlotte? I guess Charlotte's a better timing wise. I don't know.
The only other thing, I don't know. That's a coin flip to me.
Yeah.
The only other thing the variety clause is something I put in that chart. That's important because teams can't play in the same bowl in a certain time window. So Rutgers cannot play in the Pinstripe Bowl this year. You'll see Iowa can't go back to the Citrus Bowl if it finishes 8-4. So there are things like that, and there are certainly scenarios too where there are more Big Ten eligible teams that fill those 7 games, and then Rutgers ends up in the Boca Bowl or the Armed Forces Bowl or a situation like that. But I think that's kind of unlikely too.
And Duke's Mayo, we got a full month to debate whether or not Greg Shannon would do the Mayo bath. Are you shaking your head? A lot of pressure.
This is great because he's already saying no. I'm already saying yes.
I'm begging him not to. I'm saying no for my own health and sanity. I'm begging him not to do it. I just it's one of the most disgusting, reviling things in the world. Maybe it's disgusting.
It is bad. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where it's funny. I honestly, I understand strong opinions. I appreciate. I'm the one that's calm with you. I should have a strong take on this. I do not know what Greg Shannon's going to do with the man. I really don't. I don't know. I'd love to spend. Really, be the first question at the. I'd be front and center. Like who you playing? I don't care about the matchup. I was like Greg Mayo, right?
I think you have to. I think you have to. You have to play along. You can't be the one guy who's like, nah, no thanks.
Oh, sure you can. I mean, you just said why. You can make the stand. You could take a stand for humanity here against Mayo on your head. You could make there's a case to be made that he would be doing what's right for society as a whole. We've gone too far. This is going to be a great column when that happens. Go Mayo. I'm rooting for the Mayo Bowl now. That's it. Charlotte, it's January 3rd. Let's make it happen. Whew. Okay. Oh, let's talk about the telecast. You guys didn't get to watch this.
I listened. I listened.
You did listen to it?
Every time they said a name wrong, I pulled the headphones off and I told everyone around me. They just said Joe Haramisiak.
Look, I get it. I've mispronounced Calic Manis on this show. Probably just did right then 1,000 times. I understand it happens, but you're Chris Myers. I mean, you guys are a professional outfit. It was just amazing, and it wasn't just the mispronounced names. I just couldn't believe they didn't know the rules of their touchdown in the back of the end zone that Maryland scored. They're like, well, they should review that to see if there's 2 feet down. I'm like, I had to Google it. I was like, did I miss that? Did they change that rule and I missed it? I was like, wait a minute. It's just crazy stuff like that. The interception late in the game. Just an enormous play. The call was like, that looks like that's a takeaway. I mean, shit. That's all you're gonna say? Yeah, it was just I had not, and I get it. And someone pointed out you probably don't watch as many games as the fans do, and that's totally correct. So I'm at these games, I don't see it like I did during the pandemic, and everyone else. I did I had the club out to Pinata, what's his face on the Big Ten broadcast. I understand that, but it was as bad as Matt Millen. Yeah. It is as bad as I can ever remember watching a game. It was really kind of strange how bad it was, man.
The ones that I remember, and this was a crazy weekend for me, and these are still front and center. They called him Shiani at one point. Greg Shiani.
He did. I know. It's right. I couldn't believe it. Like, of all the names, I get it. You might, Mangala Monangai, but a Shiani? Shiani? Man.
That was wild. And just not even getting the touchdown to Ian Strong. I think they said it was KJ Duff or Miller.
Miller.
Yeah.
Mixed it up a million. Missed those two guys up a bunch of times. Didn't correct themselves. I mean, yeah, it was
not good.
And they had Tyreen Powell on the mixed up. Had Maryland 20. I mean, it's just stuff that you're just basic. Flip over your, roster, dude. Come on.
Yes.
Well, we got your back viewing audience here on the Rutgers Rant.
Exactly. Yes.
And in fairness to him, there were a couple things. One, he called Ben Black DeAndre Johnson because Ben Black changes his number from 2 to 81 midway through the season. Maybe the flip card wasn't updated, and they did
somebody else's. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also he said Kosh Sanders started his first game last week against Minnesota. That's not true. He started the season opener against Howard, which fine, whatever. Those are understandable mistakes in a vacuum. But when you mispronounce Cali McManus's name 7 different times to a degree that's almost impressive, how you invent a new last name, then you're kind of going to get.
He had like 9 syllables in at one point. It was like Cali go back and McManus. It was great. Yeah, it's
and he realized that at the start of the second quarter, he tried to say his name 3 times. He was like Cali McManus. He was
just
trying to
call him Ethan like I do. Come on. All right, let's do it, Dive. We got to do some questions, and we got to talk some basketball at the end here. So let's. We're already 26 minutes into this. Thanks for asking. If you're not in the Discord yet, ask me. We send you an invitation. We're having a good time with the Discord. I like it. It's better than subtext. I think we can interact with each other. We can put the usual texts in the different locations. So if you don't want to read all of our ramblings during, I understand that totally. But it's we have a place for that as well. So sign up for it. Let us know if you need an invitation. All right. A lot of people ask about the injuries. This is a topic. Rutgers lost 2 more players in that game. The question was Rutgers has what seems to be an inordinate amount of season injuries. Is this just one of those things, or does it point to issues within the strength and conditioning program? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, Pat, you're a Giants fan. The Giants went through the same question for 5 years when they had guys go down.
Yeah, it's this question comes up every week too, it seems. So just to put it out there again, it's just bad luck and one of those things, right? These aren't like fluke injuries. These are guys getting rolled up on and twisting their knees the wrong way. And it's just a physical sport, and these things happen. Nothing more than that, in my opinion.
If you look at the 2 guys the 2 latest guys, like Tyler Needham, like Pat said, just someone rolled up on his knee and hit it awkwardly. And he only has 3 games left in the regular season, right? So even if it's not a torn ACL, there's less time. And Abram Wright, I mean, I feel terrible for the guy. He's celebrating a safety and just non-contact injury. Like that's not, I mean, maybe to a degree, it's strength and conditioning in a way I can't figure out, but I think it's just freak accident, right?
Yep. Strength and conditioning would be, you're pulling a muscle or something like that, or you're not in shape, but that's never going to happen with this team. They take that very seriously, the sports nutrition very seriously, the hydration, sleep, all that. So it's just a luck thing.
All right, JP, a friend of the pod, wants to know if injuries are a good thing. Well, everyone knows we're happy with the turnaround. Do you think the injuries of this season can end up being a blessing in disguise? A lot of young guys are getting playing time they probably weren't going to get without these injuries. This, in my opinion, helped both with development, but also with identifying potential portal needs. Good point. What do you guys think? Is there a silver lining to what, to having some of these guys out here and now kind of recognizing, where the needs are?
I mean, it's a positive spin. I think you'd still rather have the guys be healthy because you'd probably be, 7-3, maybe 8-2 right now if you had a fully healthy roster. But that's a nice way to kind of look at it, half glass full.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's making the best of a bad scenario, right? That's probably all you can really look into it. There were some guys that have been thrust in, the guys that have come out of nowhere. Jordan Walker being one of the defensive end. There's a bunch of guys. KJ Duff probably got. He was more of a talent guy, but Jabomi, the linebacker, Taj White playing on the offensive line. So there are a lot of guys, and it was a combination of a lot of things, I think. So But yeah, it's certainly a good way to look at it if you're gonna take a silver lining.
All right. Some different NIL questions. That people saw the news that Michigan bought a 5-star recruit for $10.5 million, or got
Tried
on the
to.
flip. Tried to. What
Tried
was
to.
what? Tried.
They offered him $10.5 million. He stayed committed to LSU. He did not take the offer.
Then LSU match it. What was the?
That was not reported, but he was committed to LSU. He's from Michigan. Michigan allegedly offered him $10.5 million, and he turned it down, and he's staying committed to LSU.
Right. Rocco wants to know, will there be any rules put in place to prevent the team from buying a national championship? I mean, someone's going to buy one this year. Make the list look at the teams in the playoff, and pretty clearly, we have a good sense what the teams are with the highest NIL. What do you guys think? I mean, there's talk about making it real NIL when the 21 million goes in, when the revenue sharing goes in. Is that even feasible to do that?
Do you trust the NCAA?
I don't trust the NCAA no, of course not. Yeah. That's my answer, right?
The rules could only be enforced. The rules only matter if they're enforced, right? So they can have this revenue sharing ceiling, whatever, that only the schools can give. They can't stop players from getting name, image, and likeness payments. Like, you just can't do that, right? So, and in theory, you could figure out what's real NIL with market value or whatever, but there's always going to, before NIL, teams were figuring out a way to pay players under the table. You don't think they're going to figure it out now? This is just going to be the way of the world. It is what it is.
True. Yep.
Yeah, I think Brian kind of summed it up there. How easy is it to send out a tweet for $10 million, right? That's all. That's a legitimate NIL use of funds, right? Like, it is what it is.
It's very expensive tweet. Yeah.
It's an expensive tweet, but legal.
It is. Yeah. It is fascinating because I do wonder, and I think there's a feeling that, the revenue sharing thing will help teams like Rutgers or Purdue or other programs when you finally get $21 million you can spend on player salaries. But if Ohio State's still spending $30 million on top of that, the problem doesn't change. It's just the expense. It's just the cost went up. So I'm curious to see what happens in that new reality. It's going to be fascinating to see. And I think there is still a way. It would be better for a place like Rutgers because at least you have some money to play around with. They're winning right now with a quarterback in Ethan Kaliakmanis who will not be a $10 million quarterback. So it's possible to, when you look at it that way, all right. So there is a ceiling, I think, that's put in place there. If that's still happening, where it's going to be very difficult to beat teams that have all this money. That's for another year.
It raises the floor. It matches you up with a lot of like-minded teams. It kind of evens all the playing field for the mid-tier programs. Like you said, the Michigans, Ohio States, Oregons, the teams with enormous payrolls, they're still going to be, 2 or 3 feet ahead of everyone else.
A couple of readers asked about Ray Rice. What is the deal with Ray Rice in the university? Greg seems all in. A little surprised he's not a coach or something. Can you give us color on what Ray's doing these days? His involvement with Greg in the university. Obviously, everyone knows what happened with Greg 10 years ago. Wrote a column recently, and I believe that he has certainly done enough to be welcomed back into the Rutgers family. I think he should be in the Rutgers Hall of Fame. I think it is at this point kind of silly he's not. I think he will be next year. That's my prediction on that. Brian, what is he doing? He's coaching this. He's got young kids. Is he spending time with them? Did you ask him what's going on in the Ray Rice world?
I didn't on Saturday, but I spoke to him last year, and yeah, he's coaching his son's team and really just being a family guy. I don't think he's coaching in high schools or anything, because I know at some point he was at New Rochelle, his high school, coaching for a bit. He's not in college coaching ranks. I think he's just being a normal citizen, and I don't think he has any interest in the coaching ranks, frankly. But I do think that the next step is, you're right, he'll be invited back, Hall of Fame introduction. I don't think he'll be ever, plastered all over the program like he was back in the day before the incident. But I think that clearly the program has ingratiated him back into the fold. And I think that once he gets led into the Hall of Fame, that's kind of the point where it'll end. I don't anticipate him joining the staff or anything else like that.
No. And yeah, you have to for a job like that, you got to be ready to work 80 hours a week. And I don't think some guys who have the NFL, money want to do that. But yeah, I think there's a role. I think there's got to be some role for him in the program as an ambassador or something. I think I'm surprised you haven't seen more of him. Maybe you will see more of him. That's a good point. Yeah. All right. What else do we got here? Oh, the people have asked this, Pat. Maybe you can explain it. The bowl Passover rule. Even if we go 7-5, is it true that bowls can pick 6 and 6 ahead of us? That is true, right?
That is true. That is true. That's what you were talking about before with negotiations and invites, and some teams travel better, so that's more attractive for the bowls. But generally, it would be really hard for a 6 and 6 team to jump 8 and 4. I think that would be just completely unfair.
Right.
Especially the way these standings are going to shake out too, right? There's going to be like 8 and 4, you'll be 5th or 6th in the Big Ten. 6 and 6, you'll be 13th or 14th. You know,
you could be 6 and 6 Michigan though.
Right. That's the big fear. But I think if you watched Michigan this year, it's not a great product.
It's not a great product, but there are bowl scouts
there are
thinking about product.
A lot of green.
Yeah.
There's a lot of green there.
Right. And this, someone wants to know, what seniors would you expect to sit out a bowl game?
They just made a bowl game. Why are we speculating on who's not going to play in the bowl game? Leave that for 2 weeks from now. People say we're negative. Jesus Christ. It's been 48 hours and they're already predicting who's going to.
I thought it. You didn't think it last year? No one played from Miami. Everyone played for Rutgers.
It's a great question. It's a great question to ask in a week. Like, enjoy the fact they made a bowl game. To answer the question, I don't know. It depends probably on injuries. It depends on NFL prospects. It depends on a bunch of things.
Right. It ain't going to be Monangai. He's going to play in the bowl game. Like I'd be very surprised unless he hires an agent and his agent is like, I think he already has an agent, but unless his agent tells him, look, man, you can't do this for your draft stock. He's already playing with 100 injuries. The guy loves football. He loves the team. He's just wired that way. He's like a Greg Schiano guy. I just can't imagine that he wouldn't play in the bowl game. I could be proven wrong. Looking down the list of guys, some of them are just, whether or not they can get healthy in a month. Like I think Tyrene Powell would play.
He played all 86 snaps on Saturday. That is crazy.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. That could be the biggest adjustment they made, that he's playing every year. That's something else.
The only scenario where Rutgers guys, I feel like sit out a potential bowl game is the Max Melton scenario of last year, right? Like the guy is very clearly going to be a high draft pick.
Yeah. Right.
And that's not worth it.
Yeah. They don't have
and on this team, maybe the only guy that's a mid-level guy is potentially Holland Pierce, left tackle, and Monangai. I think those are the two most draftable guys. And Holland Pierce has played, I think, 38 games in a row, right? Like he's not worried about one game. I think those are the only two guys I would even think about potentially sitting out.
All right. Good job with your questions. Thank you very much. We'll try to get to a few more at our Picks Pod week later in the week. Let's talk hoops, man. Got 37 minutes before I said the words Ace Bailey. We got our first glimpse of Ace Bailey against Monmouth, and it lived up to what we expected. I just like, let me tell you, I'll describe this moment, because I was trying to write a column about his one move that he made. And I failed to even explain it to Zach Martini. We're in the post-game press conference, and I'm like, Zach, he made that move where he did the thing with the ball, and Zach's like, yeah, I know. Zach knew exactly what I was talking about. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And he says, that's when I looked at my teammate and said, that's why he's going to be the number one picked in the draft. And it was the move, Brian, where he takes the ball from the 3-point line, dribbles between his legs, takes the ball behind his back, spins a full 360, didn't lose his defender. Like the 6'9" guy still with his hand in his face, and he just calmly swishes a fade away. I don't know. It's an NBA play. Certainly, I don't think we've seen that a lot in Piscataway over the years. It was just one moment where you're like, he's different.
There's no player that has ever played for Rutgers who could do that. I'm fairly confident in saying that. They gave him the ball with 5 seconds left on the shot clock. He dribbled once to his right, crossed over to his left, dribbled again to his right, spun around, fade away. He's between his 6'9", 6'10" height and his long, he was probably shooting the ball 10 feet above the air. As the shot clock expires, the ball goes through the net, not even a hint of touching the rim. Just That's the thing you see in a Nets-Knicks game. Like that you understand completely in that moment why everyone in the NBA is so fascinated by it, right? And I think the first play of the game, he hits the 3-pointer. Shout out to who do they play? I forgot who they play. Monmouth is the first team I've ever seen sniff out the most obvious opening play Rutgers runs every game, where they give the ball to the point guard and the guy runs an alley-oop. They ran it for Cliff every game last year. They tried to run it for Ace for that big dunk to open the game, and Monmouth was smart enough to just put a guy at the top of the key and hold Ace out. It was greatest coaching move I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, Ace doesn't get the dunk, but he gets the open 3. He knocks it down. He had moments where when he flew for that alley-oop dunk, jumped higher than any Rutgers player I've ever seen. Like, the athleticism, the skill is all there. The only thing missing is what I pestered you the entire game about. Sometimes he just seems like he doesn't know that he's allowed to pass the ball, and it kills me. And sometimes he takes some tough shots that he doesn't need to. Those are things that probably need to be hammered out of him. I've talked about it a billion times. It will infuriate me all year. But when he makes a shot like the one you're talking about, Steve, I kind of shrug my shoulders and say, all right, maybe he should never pass the ball ever again.
Yeah.
I think I was going to say, I think his inability to share the ball, Brian's biggest criticism, is probably one of the most attractive NBA qualities.
Right.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
They don't pass the ball.
Yeah. There are guys on that team who I do think should share the ball more, and he's not one of them. Although I get what you're saying. I understand. I do. Like, he can't be, but to the point, and someone made, he played 30 minutes, only took 10 shots. He had 17 points, got to the free throw line. Like, I certainly don't think he was a ball hog. The only thing I'm concerned about, it's still that, he left the game with an injury. He looked a little gassed. He still looked like a guy who, is not ready for the pace of the college season. I kind of felt that way early about Dylan Harper. He certainly moved past it. That's no longer a concern. Maybe in a couple of games we'll be like, same thing, not a concern. Ace just had to get his feet under him the first couple of games, that it won't be a problem. But that's the one thing, that kind of came back to me when you get those little injuries, when you get cramps at the end of a game like that. And clearly Steve Peichel wasn't taking him out for a lot. Like, he took him out, put him right back in. Guy's going to play 35 minutes a game.
Yeah, him and Dylan Harper should play 35 minutes a game.
Yeah,
if they don't, it's probably a concern. He'll be fine physically. I think that was the concern, though, right? Because he is, for all his athleticism and skill, he is pretty frail, like thin, I should say. So you wonder about the physicality. And Rutgers will hope that it's just a cramp, or just a small thing, but it's something worth monitoring.
Yeah. And the other takeaway, Pat, is like I left those 3 games feeling better, but like I would be stunned if this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament. I just think that they're at that level. They're going to make they'll be there in March. But on the flip side of the coin, it's like they don't defend anybody. Like, I mean, like gave him 50 something. I guess it's not like it's still, Wagner scored 28 against Seton Hall. Like, Monmouth came into this game, I forget his name, 37 points. They threw a bunch of players on him, couldn't stop him. I mean, it's a concern.
I could give Gio Baker a shout out for this comment, because we were talking after the game, and his point was that when you score a lot of points, that's pure talent, right? That's what you're seeing here from this Rutgers team. Defense can be taught, coached, and developed. So that's the goal. And you got a guy that has an entire career built around playing defense. So you would think that Rutgers has a good shot at developing some defensive prowess as the season goes on, especially in games that are going to be closer and tighter and amplified defense. And to Rutgers' credit, when St. Peter's in that crazy back and forth game, they rose to the occasion defensively. So it's there, but I think when you're scoring 98 points in a game, maybe the defense doesn't have to be completely perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Sometimes a guy just goes nuclear on you and hits 11 threes. So it just happens, right? And that's what the kid's name is, Abdi Bashar. And King Rice seemingly accepted the fate that he will not have him on his roster next year. And I saw
I've never seen that before. It was such a great point. If you're a Mama fan, you're like, wait, what? Can we try to keep this kid?
Once he gets to 25 points, you're like, all right, Abdi, that's enough. You could calm down. And then he hits 38. They're like, all right, well, a lot of Rutgers fans were in my mentions already asking for if he can make Rutgers roster next year. Rutgers fans are already looking at us when this kid's on the
his best player. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor King Rice. Yeah. I did laugh about that. It's the first coach I've seen. I mean, it is November, it's like November. Come on, dude, mid-November. Let's not start losing our players to the portal already. Yeah.
I appreciate his honesty though. I appreciate a coach who acknowledges the reality directly in front of his face and says what everyone in the room is probably thinking. I really admire that about King Rice.
Yeah, at least we didn't ask him. It's like, where are you playing next year? Going back to Nebraska? Where the kids from Omaha? So, all right. Other hoop thing, Jordan Durkak. We talked about him a lot. I think his game is fantastic. He's filled in the gaps. Like we knew what Zach Martini was going to do. You needed him to hit 3-pointers, play post defense. But he's passing the ball well. He's defending, just doing everything that this team needs when it needs it. Best way to put it.
Yeah, well-rounded, great, just effort. He's the effort guy on this team. That's probably his biggest role, an energizer guy, just physically a grinder,
right? Just
all over the place. So he's going to play a lot of minutes. He's the perfect perfect guy in that starting lineup. Yep.
And Dylan Harper. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say really quick, his passing is better than I could have expected. Really, I mean, 9 assists is very, very impressive. I think that's, to me, the biggest revelation about his game is his vision and his ability to pass the ball.
Yep. And Dylan 20, 24, 20 for his first 3 games. If he gets 20 again, he'll be the first player to do it since Phil Sellers.
The first to ever do it.
First to ever do it.
No Rutgers freshman has ever scored 20 points in 4 straight games to start their career.
Wow. Okay. I misread that stat. That's incredible. So
he matched Phil Sellers for the record.
Matched Phil Sellers. That's what it was. Okay. So if he gets 20 against Mary Mack, he should get a Shake Shack burger or shake and Dylan Harper. Anyway, he's been, I mean, we kind of already talked about this, but he good.
Yeah. If anything you want to, there are things you could probably nitpick. But on the whole, just as good as advertised. Really fun to watch, like a really, really fun player to watch, makes crazy plays at the basket, finds open teammates. Just could not have gone better the first 3 games of his career.
I did notice this. Alabama lost to Purdue. I don't know if that takes any of the luster off the big Bama Rutgers matchup in Vegas, which is next week, by the way. Wow. Well, fellas.
Wow.
I didn't make it to College Park. Going to Maryland. I'm going to Vegas, though. Woo.
I'm shocked to hear that.
You're shocked to hear that, aren't you?
Shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it does. It's still one of the best Final Four favorite team that they're going to play. But I don't know. I mean, certainly more optimistic. I'm still very curious. Get through Merrimack here. I'm very curious how this team does when it gets to step up in competition. Yeah, I mean, all signs encouraging at this moment.
That Alabama game is going to be fascinating because of the reasons we're talking about. The defense, Rutgers is probably going to have to win that game in a shootout. They're probably going to have to score 98 points again to beat Alabama, who takes exclusively 3s and 2s. And I'm not sure if Rutgers struggle to defend the perimeter against the Monmouth, and they have a hard time defending the interior with their center situation. So that'll be a really, really tough matchup.
Is that a basketball thing? Takes 3s and 2s. Can you take a 4? But
I wasn't going to say anything.
3s and layups. 3s and layups and dunks. Thank you. I apologize.
I couldn't let it go, Pat. I'm sorry. Couldn't let it go.
All right, he's going to get you back on the next Calio Maka.
Totally. Of course, we got at least 2 more games and then a full week of the bowl for me to mispronounce Ethan's name. I'm never going to say it again. There you go. I figured it out. Unlike Chris Myers, I figured out the workaround. He's a first name guy. He's just Ethan. There's no other Ethan on the team. Come on. All right, what else we got? We got some wrestling. Women's soccer lost. Women's basketball. Take me through it. What we got?
I'll take you through wrestling to start here because it just happened yesterday. So Rutgers wrestled at the Jersey Jostle event at Toms River North High School. And it was just going to be another one of those, we're close, but not close enough. And it's been that way since they haven't beat a top 10 team since 2019. There were some moments to be proud of if you're Rutgers in this match. The freshman Andrew Barbosa got a ranked win in his second collegiate bout. But the grand scheme of things, the big picture is just every single time it's the same story. So another close loss. Rutgers will get a chance to wrestle number 7 Virginia Tech on Friday night. And if you're following what we've been saying for the last couple of years, that you probably kind of can guess where this one's going. But hey, maybe Rutgers finds a way to win and change the narrative. So
you guys attacked me for going at the women's soccer program last week. They have now lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament 6 times in the last 7 seasons.
Oof.
If that's not chronically underachieving, I don't know what is. Now, the one year they did,
that's bad.
the one year they did win the first round game, they made it to the Final Four, right? So that's a feather in your cap. But I think it's wildly disappointing to lose in the first round again and to do it so frequently, especially because multiple of these games have been at home. This game was at home.
Yeah. Home game, UConn. That's rough.
Listen, it is what it is. We're not going to demolish an Olympic sports team like this is the football program, but I think when this is your flagship program, really, your flagship non-football, basketball, or wrestling program, it's disappointing to see them continuously fall short to a pretty starking degree.
Rough. All right.
And women's basketball, you said they're still undefeated, I believe, right?
4-0, crushed Iona in recess game. That's what it says here in the notes. Someone else typed up at Vatek. Big game. Are they better than they were? Are we optimistic that they're not going to be, dead last come the winter?
I don't know.
Time will tell. I think there are some pieces in place, right? You got some star power on the team, so we'll see. Obviously, the Virginia Tech game is going to be a first good test. Virginia Tech's they're 3-1. They lost to Iowa, kind of got rolled by Iowa, so I think it'll be a good opportunity for Rutgers to step up the competition a little bit and see where it stands. So I would say the better. We'll probably find out after this game.
Right. All right. Let's take a deep breath. We've got a lot coming up in the next 2 weeks, fellas. If you look at this, you've got 4 fascinating college basketball games, 2 important college football games in a span of 2 weeks. 2 weeks, exactly. Yeah. We'll cover them all. We got to eat some turkey in between there too. But we'll be back later this week to make our picks for the Illinois game. I opened a commanding lead. See what you jerks do to try to catch me in the picks. I don't think it's possible, but I'll give you an opportunity. And we'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at nj.com/insider.